Hey there, race fans. It's Race Day Top 5 with me, Frank 5. Pocono Raceway, the Tricky Triangle, a track that features 3 corners that are taken pretty much from 3 different racetracks. Turn 1, Trenton Speedway. Turn 2, Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Turn 3, the Milwaukee Mile. A track that over the years has been kind of credited as kind of a lame duck track, but sometimes provides entertaining restarts. This weekend, we saw entertaining racing, interesting strategy, and a very interesting conclusion to this race coming from post-race inspection. Let's talk about all that happened. Number 1, Denny Hamlin picks up his 3rd win of the 2022 season, winning at Pocono yesterday, and it's his 7th win at this track, surpassing him ahead of Jeff Gordon for the most wins at this racetrack. A big win for Denny Hamlin. Hold on. I'm getting breaking news. Nope, never mind. Denny Hamlin and Kyle Busch, the original top 2 of the race, were disqualified. We'll talk about all that in a second. With those 2 disqualifications, original 3rd place finisher, Chase Elliott, is now the new winner of the M&M's Fan Appreciation 400 at Pocono Raceway, beating Tyler Reddick, Daniel Suarez, Christopher Bell, and Kyle Larson for the win via post-race inspection. Well, let's get started with Chase Elliott. You know, how he kind of was given this win. A lot of people are going to say this is kind of a Mickey Mouse win given to him post-race. Kind of, but we'll get into the details of this qualification, the top 2 in a little bit. But as for Chase Elliott, let's talk about his day and how he got to this position to be the guy to get the win after the race was concluded. Elliott started the race in the 3rd position, ran top 5 pretty much the entire first stage, finished 2nd to his teammate Kyle Larson. Then, whenever the leaders that stayed out towards the end of that stage for those stage points, and others pitted towards the end of that stage so they could get track position for stage 2, Elliott restarted in the middle of the pack. So he had to kind of fight his way to get that track position back, but every time he tried to do that, he kind of slipped back a couple positions because we had restart after restart after restart because there was a couple of incidents at the start of the 2nd stage. But as things settled down, he was able to methodically work his way up there and got 8th at the end of stage 2, and continued to work his way up through the field in the final stage, where he got himself closer to the top 5. Then on the 2nd to last restart, he put himself in position in the top 5 and was able to barely dodge an incident, which we'll also discuss a little bit, where he nearly got clipped by the one of Ross Chastain. Elliott snuck through and was able to restart in the 4th position. And on the restart, he was able to surpass Tyler Reddick, which, little did we all know, that was the battle for the actual win, believe it or not, which we had no clue. But at the end of the day, it was Chase Elliott who finished originally 3rd, but then via post-race, he was given the win at Pocono. And this is the highest finish for him at the track. A track where his first ever Cup start here, he actually was one of the best cars. He led a lot of laps. It looked like that race was going to be his breakthrough for his first Cup win. However, he lost some of his track position, worked his way back up to 4th, while Kurt Busch was celebrating that victory. But Elliott kind of, wished he had better track position and done better on some of those restarts, so he wouldn't have had a 4th place finish. But nonetheless, he had been in his early races at Pocono relatively well, then hit a little bit of a slump, then quickly regained the momentum. Last year's races were a little bit challenging for him, even though there was some speed. The finishes never showed him, but he's definitely had some speed at Pocono over the years as long as he has good track position. Yesterday, he picks up his 3rd win out of the previous 5 races. Remember last week where I said, wouldn't it be amazing if he won his first race of the stretch, which was Nashville, 2nd at Road America, 1st and Atlanta, 2nd in New Hampshire, and he won at Pocono. Well, he won, but not how we kind of thought he was going to probably do it. But regardless, that's now 3 out of the last 5, his 4th win of the season. Now, earlier today, Chase Elliott actually was interviewed by Bob Pockrass asking about how he felt about it. He said, I actually didn't find out till I landed home off of my jet because he had no service. He got home and he received a text message saying that he had been declared the winner because of the top 2. He came out today and admitted he's not celebrating the victory because he felt like, I really kind of don't deserve it. He said Denny Hamlin can keep the trophy, if he wants. But he said, I'm not interested in the trophy because I kind of don't feel like we deserve the win. Which, that's interesting to hear from him. But at the end of the day, I think he also needs to realize that's now 5 more bonus points for a win. That adds to his point total for the year, 25 bonus points. And remember, he's still the regular season championship leader, now by 108 points. That's pretty much 3 races, or 2.5 races if you want to calculate points with stage points included, ahead of 2nd place Ross Chastain. With 5 races to go, I think we can all officially say right now, even though it hasn't been confirmed yet, that Chase Elliott will be the regular season champion and he'll get 15 extra bonus points to carry to the playoffs. But I do understand why Elliott kind of wasn't really, totally happy about giving this win. He wanted to kind of earn it himself. But at the end of the day, a win is a win, even though he admits that it's not how he expected to get it. That's still 5 extra bonus points and continues his hot streak. I mean, there's just no stopping the 9 car. I mean, even if he was placed in 3rd place and didn't get to move up 2 spots with the post-race issues afterwards, he's still been on a hot streak of solid runs and fast race cars. There's no denying that. So, Chase Elliott and the 9 team, congrats on a win that we kind of all did not see coming, in all honesty. Number 2, the Gibbs cars. The top 2 went from the top to finishing at the bottom via post-race. Before we get into what happened to both cars, let's talk about the race. Both cars, Denny Hamlin and Kyle Busch, started on the front row. Fun fact, the top 3 of the race at the start were Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch, Chase Elliott. Had post-race inspection not had these problems, that's where they would finish at the end of the race. 1, 2, 3. Denny Hamlin at the start of the race drifted a little high off of turn 1 and scraped the wall a little bit and lost some of his track position. Kyle Busch took the lead. Then we had a caution for Austin Cindric spinning. And on the restart in turn 1, Kyle Busch did the same thing Denny Hamlin did. Went wide, lost all of his track position, and didn't win the stage. But eventually, both of them were able to get it back at stage 2. But early in stage 2, Denny Hamlin actually spun in the tunnel turn in turn 2. Lost his track position, but gained it back with a fast race car. And Kyle Busch was pretty much the dominant car of the second stage while contending with guys like his teammate Christopher Bell and corporate teammate Bubba Wallace. Kyle Busch would go on to win stage 2, but that would not be the case with his disqualification. That would go to Ross Chastain. Both of them found themselves battling for the lead in the final stage with Ross Chastain, who beat both of them during green flag pit stops. Then a caution came out for Ryan Blaney's crash. Both of them restarted at the front. Hamlin took the lead with the incident we'll also get into, then held off his teammate Kyle Busch. And Denny Hamlin, by the way, had we gone green the rest of the way and didn't have those cautions, they were close on fuel because during their green flag pit stop, they did not get the car completely full of gasoline, and they would have been 2.5 laps short. Had we not had those late race cautions, the 11 car wouldn't have made it whatsoever. But he did. He got to the start-finish line first, Kyle Busch second, and Denny was eventually, at the time, was celebrating and basically doing this sleeping thing, saying, I'm silencing the haters for, how people feel about him, of course, what we're going to talk about. But at the end of the day, NASCAR found that both the 11 and the 18 car violated one of the rules for NASCAR's next-gen car that disqualified them. What we found out today, that there was a little bit of tampering with the front fascia of the car for aerodynamic reasons. Apparently, there was small pieces of clear tape that we couldn't really see on the front part of the grills of these cars. NASCAR specifically said before the season started, when all these teams were given these next-gen cars. The Chevy teams were given the Chevy bodies. Everybody gets equal bodies. Same goes for Toyota and Ford. They said there will be no tampering, with basically meaning no tape is allowed to be put on the front grills of these cars, because the way these cars are set up to provide closer racing and not trying to give anybody an advantage and let the best cars race each other based on your handling and how you work on the race car, there is to be no tape on the front of these grills. And apparently there was some clear tape on the front grills of the 11 and the 18. NASCAR found it, and they found that material, said, that does not meet our modifications. You two are disqualified from the race. Back towards the end of the 2018 season, after Kevin Harvick won at Texas, but his car failed post-race inspection, he kept the victory, but they basically gave him a reduction of points because of it. In 2019, NASCAR, at the start of the season, dropped the hammer by saying, if you are the winner or in the top 3 spots have a problem with your car post-race and don't meet our modifications, you will be disqualified. That went for every series, the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series. This is the first time since 1960 where a Cup driver who thought he won the race was disqualified post-race and was therefore stripped of a win. That race happened to a driver in 1960. I don't remember his name, but I know the guy given the win was the clown back then of NASCAR, Joe Weatherly. So, at the end of the day, Denny Hamlin went from his 3rd win of the season and his 7th win at Pocono to now still tied with Jeff Gordon at Pocono for the most wins at 6 and 2 wins on the season. And Kyle Busch, who coming to this race with M&M sponsoring this event. Remember, M&M's is leaving the sport again at the end of this year, and there's still contract discussions going on about what's going to happen to Kyle. Is he staying with JGR? Is he going elsewhere? Is he maybe even not going to have a ride next year? That won't happen. He'll still have a ride next year. I think it'll still be with JGR. They just got to get a sponsor. But Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin, stripped of these top 2 spots, kind of should be a little embarrassed. The team should look embarrassed for this tampering of the car. And JGR did come out later today and said that they are not going to appeal this. They will accept the disqualification, which means that the 9 car will be given the victory. So it hurts the 11 and the 18, and it hurts the 11 because that's 5 bonus points taken away from him. And Kyle Busch won a stage originally. That's a bonus point taken away from him. These guys are now seeing what NASCAR meant when they dropped the hammer back in 2019 saying, we will disqualify you if there is something wrong with this car. And with this next-gen car, they are going aggressive on these guys. And they even put out new rules this year for this next-gen car. Any serious tampering could mean an L3 penalty, meaning your playoff spot is stripped until you maybe get another win. I have to go back and look at the rule book, but they mean your playoff spot would be stripped even if you'd won some races. So nobody wants that whatsoever. So both the GG cars thought they were the top 2, but at the end of the day, they're at the bottom of the leaderboard. So it kind of puts a bad image on those 2 guys and JGR for what happened post-race yesterday. Number 3, Denny and Ross. They can't seem to separate from each other. It's like an abusive relationship, even though they're not together. So as we all know, going back to Gateway, Ross Chastain battling Denny Hamlin for a position on the racetrack in turn 1, bumps the 11 car, sends him into the wall, and he has to run the rest of the race with a damaged car, and kept trying to wreck Ross when he found him on the racetrack. Even though it never worked, Chastain got a top 10. He owed up to his mistakes post-race. Well, the 2 got into it again in Atlanta in the closing stages of the race, where Chastain slipped up the track at 3 and 4, got into the 11, turned him around and sent him spinning. Then he said post-race, I'm not going to put up with it anymore. I'm tired of all this. Well, yesterday, with a couple laps to go in the race, what we thought possibly could be the battle for the win eventually, Denny Hamlin in turn 1, racing side-by-side with Ross Chastain, gets a little bit loose or carries up the track. He's trying. He has the racing groove, and he's ahead, and he's trying to give him enough room. Chastain slips up the track and hits the wall and ricochets into traffic and collected the 4 car of Kevin Harvick, who had to settle for a 28th place finish. And at the end of the day, Ross ended up with a wrecked car in 33rd place because of the 11 and the 18 being disqualified. So at the end of the day, I mean, they were both asked about the incident. Chastain said, I had a fast car. It's just one of the things. Then he tried to retaliate, and that's, what he wanted, and that's what he got. They asked, is it over between you and Denny? And Ross shook his head, saying, just carry on. This might still be a war between these 2, in all honesty. And Denny Hamlin, who thought he'd won the race, was asked about that, saying, well, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? And he kind of gave him room. And Hamlin, that was kind of clean racing. I don't necessarily think it was retaliation. Some people might look at it. But at the end of the day, I still think both drivers get karma for that. Chastain got wrecked. Hamlin got disqualified. Both drivers don't win at the end of the day, regardless of the outcome of that wreck. But how much further are these 2 going to continue to battle each other? Are we going to see this continue in the playoffs when both drivers could be battling for a championship? That all remains to be seen. But this thing, I think, is going to continue on for many years to come with these guys. Number 4, a young gun from the Xfinity Series called up to replace a Cup superstar. So on Saturday, during qualifying, Kurt Busch, driving the number 45 car for 2311 Racing, spun off of turn 3, backed his car into the outside wall, and pretty much sent the team to work on the car. Eventually, they had to go to a backup car and start the race at the rear. Well, on Sunday morning, hours before the race, it was announced by doctors that Kurt Busch was not medically cleared to run the race and said he had concussion-like symptoms. So for the first time since his 3-race suspension at the start of the 2015 season, when he was being investigated for that domestic crap with his former ex-girlfriend, Kurt Busch could not run this Cup race yesterday. And therefore, Joe Gibbs actually called up his grandson, Ty Gibbs, who's currently running the Xfinity Series, has 4 wins of the season, a great kid, great talent, very aggressive though, and has had some controversial moments this season and in the past. He was given the opportunity to drive the Cup Series 45 car yesterday. Started at the rear in the backup car, and because of a driver change, the entire day, he stayed out of harm's way. He didn't put a foot wrong. He didn't make people pissed. He was lording the car. Because eventually, folks, this kid will be in the Cup Series. It's not going to be next year because they already said he's going to run Xfinity full-time next year, and I would not rush him this early if I was Joe Gibbs. And the spots, honestly, available, there hardly aren't any spots available for him. But Ty Gibbs ran a clean race yesterday, and after running 30th to 28th, the early part of the race, he worked his way up through the field as the race progressed to the very end. He got up to the top 15 at one point, running as high as 14th. At the end of the day, he ends up with a 16th place finish for his first Cup start. I'd say that was a successful debut for this kid with a different type of car that he had to get used to and he'd never been in before. Eventually, we'll see this kid in the Cup Series, and we might see him in a couple Cup races probably next year if Joe Gibbs is willing to run a fifth car part-time for a rookie to get him some experience before he transitions to the Cup Series in the near future. But Ty Gibbs did a good job yesterday, so round of applause to him. Also, a shout out to him and Noah Gragson for a clean, hard, exciting battle for the win on Saturday, where Noah Gragson ended up winning. Both of them were side-by-side going in the tunnel turn. On the last lap, Gibbs thought he had the advantage, but got a little loose, and Gragson took that and passed him on the outside of the tunnel turn and held on for the win. Both of them have been aggressive in the past. They've had their run-ins this year, but they both ran each other hard and clean and put on a good show. So those two got a lot of respect from the fans for putting on a clean, good finish and battle for the victory. And Ty Gibbs ran a clean race yesterday and did a good job, brought the car home in one piece, and I think impressed some people. Eventually, we'll see this kid in the Cup Series, and he will be a blast to watch, and he'll be a future Cup champion. There's no doubt about that. And number 5, racing at Pocono. Over the years, it's been kind of meh. It's sometimes so boring you might want to bring a pillow to sleep on. Yesterday with this next-gen car, I was optimistic about this race. And I think it lived up to it. The next-gen cars put on a show. These are the restarts. 3, 4, 5 wide, barely down to turn 1. Sometimes in the tunnel turn if you are able to stay 3 and 4 and 5 wide. Some good racing all day round. Yeah, they got spread out, but that's typical Pocono, especially when it comes to handling, and eventually the faster cars go forward. Some of the guys that are not happy with the cars slip back, and strategy was definitely key, especially for guys that are trying to win to make the playoffs, because time's running out, folks. But yesterday I felt like it was a good, solid Pocono race with this next-gen car. It's kind of, interesting, the finish of the race, post-race, where the top two that originally crossed the finish line, 1 and 2, don't get to keep their spots because of their disqualification, but nonetheless, a good, solid race at Pocono. The long time we're going to Pocono this year, hopefully this race will help encourage fans to come. There was a good crowd, actually, yesterday. It was a good crowd and good packed infield for this race. I think they got themselves a solid race at Pocono, a very solid race with this next-gen car. So, good job, boys, for putting on a good show for Pocono Raceway. It was a good event to watch. So next week, we are off to Indianapolis Motor Speedway to run the Indy Road Course. We all know what happened last year. Chaos at the very end with the curbing coming up and so many cars spinning and crashing left and right. At the very end, it was chaos. At the end, we had a first-time Cup team in Colleague Racing get their first win as a Cup team with AJ Allmendinger, the road course ace, behind the wheel. He got them their first Cup win as a team in the Cup Series last year, and he'll be in the car this upcoming weekend in that race, and I'm sure he will be a contender for the win. But don't count out the guy that just was given a win that's been the road course king in the past. Maybe this is the weekend that Chase Elliott gains his spot at the top of the podium at the checkered flag. Or we could see somebody else, like a Martin Truex Jr., who's great on road courses. Or Ryan Blaney. Both of them were good last year. Or Chase Briscoe makes up for one that got away last year. That'll be a fun race to watch. I can't wait to see what happens. All I know is the curbing that we had those problems with last year, please stay intact. Pretty please. So that's all I have to say. I hope you all have a wonderful week. Subscribe, like, and congrats once again to Chase Elliott and the 9 team on an unexpected victory. But thank you all so much for watching. Have a wonderful week. Let's go racing!